Hey everyone, I'm Joe. Today it's time for me to do my monthly reading wrap up for June 2020. June was a good reading month. In total I read 9 books which comprise 6 authors. 5 of them are science fiction, 4 of them are fantasy, and also the quality of them, at least obviously from my personal opinion, and my enjoyment of them also varied enormously, from a lot to not at all. Frankly, some of them fell in a fairly spectacular fashion. Anyway, the first novel that I'm going to talk about is actually a fairly mediocre novel, so at least I started the month off not too bad, and it started with a complete failure of a book, although it could have been a lot better, and that is Elantris, written by Brandon Sanderson. Now, I have read a few Brandon Sanderson books in the past, and frankly they've all had the same effect on me as this one, where the writing is quite solid, the characters are solid, although there's always certain issues with them being quite predictable, and it's, to many people these books they get a lot more out of them. For me, they're okay, that's all they can ever really be, and that's my impression of Sanderson quite strongly nowadays. However, as far as this novel goes, the synopsis is quite simply: there is a magical city called Elantris. A series of essentially demigods lived there who were actually normal people that were sort of imbued with magic and became immortal and had powers and things. However, the magic faded, so did the people. Now, in the modern age, the current capital of the kingdom, which is built right next to Elantris, and has nothing to do with the city, and in fact hates everything that Elantris stood for. Something is happening in Elantris, however, and the magic which faded and disappeared may not have all disappeared and faded away completely. There may still be a little bit of magic in the world, unsurprisingly. The idea is quite solid, as I've said, but something I personally find off with the writing style and the way the characters interact and stuff. I just find the characters frankly dull in this. They were well written, but they didn't do very many interesting things. I thought, there was no emotion behind them. All the characters felt very sterile, and I think that's what I often find with Sanderson nowadays. So I think Sanderson is an author that doesn't really work for me on a personal level, although I do understand why a lot of people do find him to be a very popular and very good author overall. The second novel that I read in June was Stratagem, written by Yoshiki Tanaka. This is the 4th novel in the Legend of the Galactic Heroes series, of which there are 10 in total. This is a science fiction series in theory and in setting. However, it reads and feels almost like you are reading an alternative history fantasy novel, just happens to be set in space and spaceships. However, the overall premise of the series, this is the 4th book, I'm not going to talk about it individually. Essentially, you have this large galactic empire which is Germanic in origin. One particular group of people managed to escape and split away from the empire and formed their own republic sort of civilization, essentially. The big empire, which relies on, the sort of empirical sort of rulership, sort of like the British Empire basically, but in space. They do not like this group that are split away, and they've been in conflict with them for many years. There is a small trading group, sort of empire I suppose you could call it, stuck in the middle, and there are space battles, lots of politics, lots of intrigue, and overall I really enjoyed this novel. This may have been fractionally weaker than the previous 3, but with a 10-book series you're bound to get some novels that are more of a continuation of what's gone before and that blend into what's going ahead. This is that novel, so it's not weak, it's a middle novel, and that sort of bridge novel. So it's a good novel, but only obviously if you like the series, which I greatly do, obviously. The next novel I read on my Kindle, and I will put a picture of it up on screen now, and that is The Haunting of Tram Car 015, written by P. Djèlí Clark. Now, this is a sort of fantasy steampunk novella, in fact not a novel, and it is a continuation and sort of expanding upon the world that Clark made upon his short story that he wrote and I read 3 years ago. I talked about it at the time in a live show with Rachel, known as Canadian Booktube, a friend of mine, I'll link in the description box below. That short story was excellent. This is slightly longer, more complex, but just as fantastically written, and I love this world that Clark has made. The idea of it is quite simple, that this is set in Cairo, Egypt. The city has a tramcar network as one of its major transport networks, and spirits and such exist within this world, alternative history, and one of these spirits starts to haunt one of the tramcars, unsurprisingly, and the tramcar company sends off for a government agent to essentially try to sort of, get rid of the spirit into wherever dimensions or wherever it sort of comes from. And overall, I really enjoyed this. The writing was really interesting, very strong. Every element of the novel, both characters and setting and the politics and the world, all work together to create something greater than the sum of their parts. The world, as I've said, I love. I greatly hope that Clark writes more in this world, in whatever format, in the years to come. Although obviously I would understand that he doesn't want to be locked to this world for too long, because of course it's going to be stereotyped to this furthermore if you do that too much. Same as actors do. So you got to just a fine and careful balancing act. But overall, going back to the novel, I would greatly recommend this a lot, because this is a fantastic steampunk fantasy novella, and it also is a novella that's fairly quick and easy to read. And when I bought it, it was also on a really good offer as well, so it didn't cost a lot of money, which was ideal. The next book that I read was also on Kindle, so I will put a picture up on screen now, and that is A Taste of Honey, written by Ashante Wilson. Now this is a straightforward, not steampunk or anything, fantasy novel this time, set in a sort of very magical type world. Obviously not Earth, although it's sort of Earth-like, obviously in its general overall feel. Basically the premise is relatively simple. At the end of a conflict and a war, you've got two men in this city. One of them lives in the city. He's from a fairly well-to-do family. He's meant to get married to a connected woman, and they're meant to sort of carry on their lineage. There is a soldier in the city who is planning to go back to his homeland in the fairly near future. They bump into each other one day. They get on really well and they're able to talk, and there is a bit of a romance between them. So yes, this has romance in it, and it is a male or gay romance. So if that bothers you, then you may want to take note of that. Now, I really liked this novel. It was not really what I expected. I mean, I didn't know what to expect very much, but it was not quite as I thought. It would be more expansive in terms of a larger world with a larger city. However, I am not disappointed in this, because the intricacy and the intimacy that Wilson goes into with these characters and the way they fit into this city, and they get on with each other, and they're both trying to fit into the world that sees them in a certain way, but they're also trying to do their own thing, and it's this sort of complicated situation which is brilliantly well written, amazing ideas, and frankly the world is great. Overall, I would greatly recommend this, because it's just really enjoyable and nice to read, frankly, overall. The next book that I read was also a novella, and also by Kai Ashante Wilson, and that is the Sorcerer of the Wildeeps. Now this is again a fantasy novella. It is set in a fantasy world, and the premise of it is quite simply that one group of men want to go from one fairly not very technologically advanced city to another on a trade mission. Pretty much, I mean, it's not quite that simple, but simplicity, I'll keep it as that. And one of their party members happens to be a sorcerer, hence the title, and they have to pass through an area called the Wildeeps, unsurprisingly. Now, the journey they go on is the whole focus of the novel. It's just them leaving the city, and obviously what they do in the city before they leave, the journey through the Wildeeps, the interaction between all the other men and the sorcerer, because they respect the sorcerer but they're also wary of him because obviously what he is, nobody's entirely sure what he's capable of or even his motivation. And you've got the caravan master as well, who's an interesting character for what reasons I'm not going to say, but overall this is just an interesting journey novel. I really enjoyed this novel. It was the way the characters interact with both each other and this strange world, and their ways of looking at the world in general, because this is a world where you can be what you want to be to a certain degree. Nobody really cares, you know, your sexuality or anything else. And overall, again, I would greatly recommend this novella because, again, it is short and to the point, well written, and frankly, I really enjoyed it immensely. The next book that I read was a physical book this time, and that is Talon of the Silver Hawk, written by Raymond E. Feist. This is the first novel in the Conclave of Shadows trilogy. I will be reading the second and third in July. Now, at this point, this is now more than halfway through the overall Rift War universe of novels, which there are 13 total, different duologies, trilogies, sets of 4, and I believe a set of 5 overall. This particular novel is a boy is on the verge of becoming a man. He's on his naming ceremony in the mountains one day. Whilst he's on his naming sort of mission, a attack is undertaken on his village. Every single member of his village is completely wiped out. When he goes back, he finds all his family are dead. So he then ends up on basically this big sort of adventure to try to discover who murdered his entire village, why, and how he can fit into the world again, because you know, he's been sort of conditioned to fit within this sort of little mountain, quite tribal village, and the world itself is more advanced than this. You know, it's very much a traditional fantasy kingdom or series of kingdoms with different, you know, positions and monarchies and things. He's not used to this world, but he's going to have to get used to it though, because he has nowhere else to go anymore. And he meets characters from the previous novels, some of them, and it's just an interesting novel. If you've read previous novels by Feist within the Rift War universe, you will probably want to read this at some point. Obviously I have. I wouldn't necessarily want to start with this. I mean, you almost could in some ways because it does stand somewhat on its own. However, there are elements that would definitely give away spoilers if you were then to read other earlier novels in this universe, which could be a great shame. So I wouldn't start with this, but definitely worth reading. It's definitely one of the more interesting novels within the Rift War universe overall. And finally, the last novel that I read wasn't just one novel, but it is actually 3 novels in an omnibus edition, and those are by Sheri S. Tepper. Now, the 3 novels in this very large Gateway omnibus edition, published by Gollancz, is After Long Silence, Shadow's End, and Six Moon Dance. I buddy read all 3 of these novels with a friend of mine, a fellow booktuber, Rachel. I will link her channel in the description box below, of course. Now, we have a long-running thing now, me and Rachel do, where we are slowly buddy reading through every novel by Tepper. Whether we will read every novel by her in total, I can't say, but we've certainly made quite a few interesting buddy reads by this point together. And I will talk about the 3 novels separately, obviously, because they are indeed fully separate, totally unrelated. They just happen to be by Tepper, so they're being combined in this very large, very heavy omnibus edition. If you want to read this particular novel, just be prepared for your hands and your wrists to ache, because this is seriously hefty. Anyway, the first one is After Long Silence. This is about a world, obviously it's not the science fiction, where alien contact has happened of a sort. There are these great big monoliths or monuments scattered throughout the world, and they are very strange because people don't know what they are there for. They're obviously alien in origin from space, but nobody understands what they're there for, or indeed how to communicate with them. They can be very dangerous if you approach them too closely and you don't pacify them. They can trigger earthquakes and all sorts of negative effects, and people will and do die from them. So you need this group of people called a singer to accompany you to sort of soothe the monuments so you can bypass them. Of course, not always successfully. Of course, it varies because these monuments seem to change with their sounds and such, and people think that they are alien in origin in terms of, are they spaceships, are they alien actually entities directly themselves that nobody really knows and nobody understands. And that's where the novel is based off. You have one set of characters who realises that something is happening with the stones, and they're on this journey to find out, kind of. Now, the writing is Tepper's usual style, which is frankly strong but strange in many ways. The characters do fit within the world, but again they are very odd, and there are characters that I and indeed Rachel did not agree with and had some pretty significant problems with, although the writing at times was not always the easiest, because the way Tepper thinks about certain events is very, very obvious that she's writing with this particular idea in mind and she's focused on it very heavily, but she throws in other ideas on top of that, which makes it go in this weird fashion. It sort of snakes around the place, and it doesn't always quite work the way Tepper obviously intended, at least I don't think it does, neither does Rachel. This one though was an interesting novel, and I would recommend this one, After Long Silence, because it was actually probably my favourite of the 3. The second one was Shadow's End. Now, this was the problem novel of the 3, and actually the one that neither Rachel nor myself actually enjoyed. The idea of this is that there is an expedition, essentially from one planet where you have a population of people to another planet which is isolated and has one survivor from a failed mission on it. They go there to find out what is going on. They know something is going on, but they don't know what. They have these little drone cameras on the planet which show some pretty weird things. I am simplifying it and making it sound more normal than it actually is, because this one is easily the weirdest of these 3 novels. It's also the one that I liked the least, because the way Tepper writes about the characters, and also one of the issues that she deals in and doesn't do very well personally, I didn't find, neither did Rachel, is the issue of consent between some of the characters. Basically, one character basically thinks that he's right to basically be a guy, and a woman's not happy with that. Basically, he's an arrogant, chauvinistic guy, and you're quite happy to and expecting something to happen to him, and you really want something to happen to him because he's not a very nice character. And it's it sort of spoils the novel, because if it wasn't for that character, the novel itself wouldn't work, admittedly, but it also would be better despite not working. If you could be a different kind of character, it might work better. But he's a major focusing point in this. It's an interesting situation to be. I mean, you want a character to not be there, but without them being there, the whole novel would be totally different, and it wouldn't be the same novel anymore. And indeed, the point of the novel would be radically different. So it's a conflicted point and an interesting one. It's interesting, just problematic, and I didn't entirely enjoy it. It wasn't the easiest to understand. I mean, that's why my synopsis of it was so basic because I'm still not entirely sure how to describe it without it just sounding completely mad. The third novel is one that me and Rachel also quite enjoyed, although obviously he had problems as well, and that is Six Moon Dance. This is essentially on a planet, a universe, which has this sort of galactic empire, so to speak. This one planet has been colonised long before, and the society on this planet though is a bit unusual because it is actually female dominant. Because of the population imbalance on this world, females actually are in a position of power, and actually they're the ones who decide everything that's happening, and the men just have to go along with what the women say. So the reverse of frankly what is happening on Earth right now, sadly. You know, ideally obviously on Earth we would like to find the middle ground between those 2 points where neither group is dominant, where we're actually working together for greater effect. Anyway, that's not the case here in our real world, or indeed in the book. A questioner who is a kind of like an intergalactic sort of judge goes to the world to check that they are following the overall rules that are laid down for all planets to abide by, and things are not going entirely the way people expect, because there are 6 moons in the sky. Every very rare occurrence, they come together. They are about to come together in this perfect alignment, and that could have implications for the planet in a very curious way, not least because it is causing a lot of earthquakes, but there's also something far greater behind it, far stranger behind it, and the cast of characters that is involved in this is really interesting. You have this wide cast. Some of them are described well, some of them are not described well. It's very mixed. Some of them seem to go off randomly and then come back with no reason as such, if that makes sense. And I liked the overall idea of the novel. There was problem moments in it though, and it wasn't the easiest to read, although I did actually enjoy it in the end. I don't know, Rachel did as well, despite issues. Although I wouldn't recommend this as an early Tepper to read though. I would say read After Long Silence first, and maybe a few of other novels. If Tepper seems to work for you, maybe read the other 2 that I've talked about, because they both got problematic writing and problematic ideas, and definitely problematic characters with their issues. After Long Silence is less problematic. They've all got issues though, frankly, and they've all got moments where it's like you can't help grimacing at and thinking, really? And you know, problem elements that I think most people would have problems with some element of all 3 novels. But overall, I really did enjoy all 3 of these, and I would recommend it, just not necessarily for your first Tepper. And with that said, that is actually it for all of the books that I read in June. If you've read any of these, or you would like to, then please leave a comment. If you have any suggestions based on these of books you think I might enjoy, then again, leave a comment. All the links to these books as well as to Rachel can be found in the description box below. With that said, that is it for this video, so thank you for watching. I'll see you another day. Bye for now.